With the slogan "It's Possible," the Labour Party (LP) platform will be published to Nigerians today, December 4, 2022, according to Nigerian news media.
Diran Onifade, the party's media director and a member of the Presidential Campaign Council, said Channels Television that the party's candidate, Peter Obi, helped write the party's manifesto, in contrast to other parties where the candidates aren't even aware of what's in the document. The Peter Obi camp based its 62-page manifesto on 7 main ideas: strong foreign policy, domestic stability, economic growth, institutional changes, technological advancements, and increases in human and financial capital all play important roles. Examining the text in more detail, I discovered that Obi and his running mate, Yusuf Dati Ahmed, promised to, among other things, protect and bond our beloved country, and make sure no Nigerian is left behind in the midst of our cultural variety. Move Nigeria from consumption to production and commence extensive legal and institutional reforms and feasible restructuring measures to fight corruption, ensure the enthronement of the rule of law, and decisively tackle all types of corruption. In addition, they promised to prioritize human capital development by putting a strong emphasis on wealth generation, distribution, and sustainable development, as well as by investing heavily in STEM education, healthcare, and infrastructure. Reduce unemployment and increase stability through facilitating easier access to capital for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, MSMEs, young people, and women. Guarantee that inclusive, cost-effective, transformative, and less transactional forms of governance are adopted and implemented in policy and practice. There will be no more distribution of the nation's wealth among a small elite. Some of the manifesto's "It's Possible" tag text is reproduced below. If you're interested in finding out more, watch till the end.
Peter Obi Baba Ahmed pact with Nigeria, purposeful and participatory leadership for national rebirth based on our 7 governance priorities. 1. Securing Nigeria, ending banditry and insurgency, and uniting our dear nation, to manage our diversity such that no one is left behind. 2. Production-centered growth for food security and export, moving Nigeria from consumption to production. 3. Restructuring the polity through effective legal and institutional reforms, to fight corruption and enthrone rule of law and all-inclusive and effective government. 4. Leapfrogging Nigeria from an oil-dependent economy to the 4th Industrial Revolution, 4-year, with massive investment in new technologies. Expanding physical infrastructure, with focus on critical sectors like power, multimodal transportation, gas pipeline, etc. through efficient public-private partnership (PPP) reforms, unleashing growth, enabling entrepreneurship and market-creating innovations. 6. Youth engagement and human capital development that improves quality of life of workers and families, and productivity-enhancing education that empowers labor competitiveness. 7. Robust foreign policy that restores Nigeria's strategic relevance. As your president, I, Peter Gregory Onwuasi Obi, my vice president, Yusuf Dati Baba Ahmed, and our team pledge to secure and unite our dear nation, to manage our diversity such that no one is left behind in Nigeria. Move Nigeria from consumption to production. Embark on comprehensive legal and institutional reforms and practicable restructuring measures, to fight corruption, enthrone rule of law, and an all-inclusive and effective government. Prioritize human capital development through robust investments in STEM education, health, and infrastructural development, with emphasis on wealth creation, distribution and sustainable development. Engineer the transition of Nigeria from fossil fuel dependency to climate and eco-friendly energy use. Pursue holistic poverty eradication with emphasis on agricultural revolution through effective utilization of our vast arable lands, particularly in northern Nigeria, and erase Nigeria's categorization as the poverty capital of the world. Improve access to finance, particularly to MSMEs, youths and women, to significantly reduce unemployment and insecurity. Ensure that in policy and practice, governance will be made more inclusive, cost-effective, transformative, and less transactional. No more sharing of the national wealth by a few. Ensure that our diversity will be leveraged to give women and youths, the aged and persons with disabilities, unfettered voice in governance, and a renewed sense of patriotism and faith in Nigeria. Ensure that Nigeria is progressively better governed through legislative, executive, and judicial reforms, so that the constitutional separation of powers among the three arms of government is properly followed and the three tiers of government allowed to function independently and jointly for a more inclusive and sustainable Nigeria.
The context. Since the return of Nigeria to a democratically elected system of government in 1999, the political culture which has become entrenched in the nation is one that many decent people find unattractive. Party godfathers and bigwigs sharing out bales of money in Ghana must-go bags in the dead of night, recruitment of thugs, and in some cases hiring of assassins to be sent after political opponents. Politics, as it was being practiced, could not be engaged in by people who had a name they did not wish to smear, so most of them steered clear of it. Unfortunately, many of such people were precisely the ones our nation needed to rescue it from the precipice towards which it had been spiraling since the coming of the military into governance. Well-educated, well-exposed technocrats and professionals who had the skills required to transform Nigeria and end the incongruity of our being a rich country with an impoverished population. That was the desire at the heart of this movement, the need for a completely different kind of political party, one which would be run in line with the very best global practices. Quality of life of the politicians determine to a large extent the quality of life of the citizens of their country. They determine whether we will have good roads, good hospitals, good schools, a clean environment to live in, running water in our taps and electricity to power our endeavors. We have done ourselves a great disservice by leaving the running of our affairs in the hands of mostly inept, bigoted, and thieving individuals. How else could one put it? What has Nigeria got to show for the billions of dollars which have come into our state coffers in the past 4 to 5 decades? Within the same period, countries whose resources have not matched ours have gone on to transform their own societies, and all we can dream of is rush to those places to behold their man-made wonders. The context. Nigerians are not a peculiar species of human beings. After all, we are constant witnesses to feats regularly performed by our compatriots in various fields of endeavor around the world. Indeed, maybe we are peculiar, we tend to excel in that which we set our minds to accomplish. It is that determination that must form our rallying point. We can no longer accept that our nation is always spoken of in terms of our potential. That potential must become our reality. We therefore see it as our God-given duty to unseat the corrupt and selfish political class which has held us in its stranglehold, foisting untold hardship upon the citizens of our land. We must end our shame, and the time to do it is now. As we come to power in May 2023, we are aware of the daunting array of domestic and external challenges confronting our dear nation, Nigeria, and we are fully prepared to lead from the front. Although the domestic policy challenges have accumulated over time, the lack of adequate public policy responses has made them worse, with a devastating impact on national unity, social cohesion, public trust in government, and economic performance. At the same time, the international context has become both uncertain and demanding, especially for developing countries like ours. The war in Ukraine has injected a high degree of uncertainty about its immediate and long-term implications. Meanwhile, the economic disruptions wreaked by COVID-19 on international commerce, global supply chains, as well as international commitments such as those relating to climate change and Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, have added a layer of complexity and challenges which Nigeria must now address. While there are many poorly conceived or designed policies, Nigeria is also not bereft of good governance ideas and plans. However, a combination of institutional weaknesses and lack of political will meant that the good policies and strategies are poorly implemented, leading to poor outcomes for the people. Hence, the overall goal of our administration shall be to strengthen effective public policy-making capacity, streamline governance, make it more responsive, transformative, and effective. We must draw a clear distinction between good governance and more governance. Conventional wisdom instructs that more governance is not necessarily good governance, which ultimately is aimed at continuous delivery of services, encouraging constructive criticisms and public feedback for public policy making. Given our history, politics, and recent governance challenges, securing, uniting, and moving Nigeria forward will require a concerted shift from a coercive to a consensus-building approach. Effective governance derives its impetus and strength not from military capacity or use of force, but from strict adherence to the rule of law, the consolidation of democratic institutions, and fulfilling the social contract between the government and the people, all of which confers political and performance legitimacy on any government. As your president and vice president elected by all Nigerians, the buck will stop at our desk. We will be fully responsible for governance and national security decisions and actions undertaken by our administration. Against this backdrop, our administration has identified seven priorities for governance, even as good governance efforts will not be limited to these priorities only.
1. Securing and uniting Nigeria. In securing Nigeria, we shall I decisively deal with and put a permanent end to the incessant and notorious banditry, insurgency, catnapping, and cross-border terrorism in our country today. We will take 4 immediate steps. A. Activate all the necessary regional, cooperative arrangement on securing our borders with neighboring countries in West and Central Africa, including Niger, Chad, Cameroon. B. Embark on boosting the personnel of our armed forces and optimally equipping, training, and funding them to respond adequately to the security threats. C. Deploying state-of-the-art military technology, and D. Proactively attract necessary international military support and assistance. 2. Pursue deliberate and proactive policies that will engender a sense of security and undertake the most important task of securing Nigeria by putting in place measures that protect lives and property in the country, consistent with Section 14(1), 2b of the 1999 Constitution, as amended, which affirms that the security and welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. 3. We will from day one engage, support and partner with component parts of the Federation and national institutions to take ownership of the national security architecture with the 3-level policing at local, state, and federal levels that we shall implement. We will also adjust security modalities to address overlaps created by our obligations under the ECOWAS Protocol on the Movement of Persons.
Securing and uniting Nigeria. Security architecture with the 3-level policing at local, state, and federal levels that we shall implement. We will also adjust security modalities to address overlaps created by our obligations under the ECOWAS Protocol on the Movement of Persons. 4. Undertake primary measures to securing Nigerians, which will consist of 4 parts pursued simultaneously and in tandem: reforming the security sector, with particular emphasis on refocusing the military on external threats and border protection, and the police on internal security threats and law enforcement, swift prosecution of criminals, bandits, and terrorists, enhanced coordination among security agencies, and upholding the rule of law. V. Improve the functioning and effectiveness of our security agencies, particularly the police, by strengthening their civilian oversight as well as increasing their size, strength, equipment, funding, and enhanced professional training. Interior. Paulson. 6. Strengthen both the Ministry of Interior, Police Affairs, and other regulatory/supervisory agencies to provide robust, effective and required supervisory expectations and demands. 7. In pursuit of Section 33 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999 as amended, we shall ensure that every Nigerian life matters. Under my watch, nobody will kill a Nigerian or shed an innocent Nigerian's blood and go scot-free. We shall deploy every available resource and competence of the federal government to pursue perpetrators and bring them to justice. 8. We will establish a panel to look into the killings and human rights abuses during the #EndSARS protests and all other grievous cases of human rights abuse by security forces. We will ensure that all protesters unjustly detained during the protests and still being held in prisons will be released. Citizens killed during the protests by the security forces and their families will receive justice and adequate compensation for the harm suffered. All units of the Nigeria Police that have been reported by the citizens for widespread rights abuses will be disbanded, while officers found to have committed grievous offenses will be made to face justice. Uniting Nigeria. 1. Ensure that our administration's pronouncements, policies, and conduct reflect its strong commitment to fostering a united Nigeria, and the reaffirmation that achieving that objective requires securing the lives and property of Nigerians by creatively managing her diversity. 2. Make deliberate efforts to recreate a sense of patriotism, shared ownership, and responsibilities in matters of nation building, integration, and cohesion. 3. Ensure transparency and strict adherence to dictates of our Constitution in all matters of governance and allocation of resources and projects. 4. Direct executive action and push for legislative mandate aimed at formulating a policy on common regimentation emolument structure table, CREST, that will harmonize the wages of the federal public servants, so that public servants, whether elected or appointed, are not ranked or earn higher than career civil servants and the military, such as those in judiciary, academia, paramilitary, and federal statutory agencies. Those in these cadres should earn the same salary and the same prescribed perks and perquisites. This will aid in cutting the cost of governance while promoting amity. It will also address the incessant strikes that bedevil our country, particularly our tertiary institutions. V. Resolve the national minimum wage problem by doing away with the extant salary structure and introducing a minimum national hourly rate, by which public and private sector employers must pay employees for hours worked and overtime wages where applicable. We will drive the legislation to retain a national minimum wage with a binding effect and application across all the states and local governments of Nigeria. This shall include the criminalization of non-payment of salaries, wages, pensions, entitlements, benefits, and violation of collective bargaining agreements. Uniting Nigeria. 6. Submit an executive bill to the National Assembly for a consolidated Occupational Health and Safety Act to revamp and improve on the 2012 Labor, Safety, Health, and Welfare (LSHW) bill. 7. Make special effort pursuant to the constitutional provisions on the federal character principle to articulate a policy framework that offers opportunities to all Nigerians to serve in any capacity in the public sector anywhere in the country. 2. Production-centered growth for self-sufficiency and exports. Move Nigeria from consumption to production. In consideration of our current ranking as the least competitive economy in Africa with very low total factor productivity, TFP, and Export Competitiveness Index, ECI, we will, with all sense of urgency, aggressively pursue policies and programs to enhance the productivity and competitiveness of all the sectors of the Nigerian economy. 2. In addition to our strategic economic development plan, we have reviewed and selectively adopted critical elements in previous economic development plans in designing the bold and innovative development agenda for the new Nigeria that we shall birth. 3. While acknowledging the critical situation with our food security, we will, with the required sense of urgency, optimize all the comparative advantages of our 36 states and the FCT across all the agricultural value chains through adequate and targeted investments, policies, and programs. We shall address the identified impediments, banditry, kidnapping, terrorism, desertification, policies, to enhance food self-sufficiency and become a net food exporting nation with emphasis on the vast arable lands of our northern region. 4. We shall grow the national economy quantitatively and qualitatively by devising programs for reskilling our youths to achieve a greater synergy between their skill sets and our factor endowments, create mandatory national certification for blue-collar artisans, strengthen some of the existing tertiary schools of science and engineering to train the next generation of experts in the science, technology, engineering and mathematics, STEM, field, and create a venture capital-like fund for young entrepreneurs. V. To ensure that the country's agricultural and manufacturing sectors are compatible with the net zero emissions drive, we shall redesign incentives for present and prospective investors in the industrial sector, coupled with an apprenticeship system to provide a ready-made source of technical expertise in the relevant areas. Production-centered growth for self-sufficiency and exports. 6. It is recognized that high logistics costs at our ports, borders, and roads drive the huge trade costs that make Nigeria's business environment uncompetitive. We will apply purposeful leadership to dismantle the impediments to free trade and ease of doing business. 7. We commit to a zero-based national budget to overcome the mindset and realities of past non-performing national budgets that are routinely hampered by budgetary deficit overhang. We will pursue aggressive technology-driven public sector financial management system anchored on well-trained and motivated civil service. 8. We will foster economic policies that are assertive and robust with a view to reducing drastically our debt servicing ratio. Such policy action is imperative since we are aware that presently, as of April 2022, Nigeria has about 95 million people living below the poverty line. Unemployment rate hovers around 32% with the youth component at about 53.4%, and tax contributes only about 6% to our GDP, well below the African average of 17%. Our national situation is made worse given that 116% of government revenue is now devoted to debt servicing, that is, 116 kobo out of every naira, 100 kobo, collected by government goes toward servicing of the country's debt, which means additional 16 kobo is borrowed to service debt. 9. We shall aggressively prioritize the mechanization of the huge endowment of arable land across our nation, particularly in our northern region, to make agriculture the new oil of the new Nigeria our government shall birth. It has been established that Nigeria is among the top 10 most vulnerable countries to climate change, which poses the greatest economic, physical, financial, and developmental risks. But it also offers enormous opportunity to unleash the green growth transition and boost prosperity. We shall establish a Green Army tasked with identifying all opportunities to tap into the $3 trillion international climate finance to engineer economic growth and employment for millions of our youths and transition our country to the green epoch. We are on a mission to disrupt the deterioration of our beloved country. We want to end the race to extreme poverty and state collapse under mercenaries who have posed as messiahs. Now is the time for new beginning. There is a strong determination of Nigerian peoples, especially the youths, to create a new future for themselves, a future of prosperity, safety, and freedom. The Obi Baba Ahmed team is committed to this mission. We want to heal Nigeria. But to solve a problem, you must understand its pathology. To heal Nigeria, we need a good diagnosis of its problems. The problem with Nigeria is elite capture. Nigeria has been captured by an elite that has shown no commitment to development. The result is that in spite of trillions of naira from oil revenue and the abundant human and natural endowments, the country has remained poor and unstable. This failure of development and political stability has worsened since the return of democracy in 1999. Although we made modest gains from 1999 to 2015, the culture of corruption, highlighted by plundering of state resources and insensitivity to the suffering of the people, continued to define statecraft and resulted in growth without development. Since 2015, the crisis of leadership has worsened to the point that the Nigerian state is now generally described as a failed or failing state. A sizable portion of Nigeria is under the control of either terrorists, bandits, or insurgents. About 63% of Nigerians, 133 are so poor that they do not have access to basic sanitation, good nutrition, basic education and healthcare, or employment. In 2022 alone, 5.1 million Nigerians entered into acute poverty, bringing the number of extremely poor Nigerians to 95 million.
A new Nigeria is possible. The new Nigeria we seek will be a united and secure Nigeria that symbolizes the spirit, letters, and exhorting ethos of our national anthem, one nation bound in freedom, peace and unity, where peace and justice shall reign. As your president, my team and I will recreate a prosperous nation. We will proactively reverse the current ugly trend of endemic poverty and ensure to guarantee equity and fairness while defending the rights of every Nigerian. We will build a new nation where citizens' interests will supersede political interests and the existing trust gap between the government and the governed will be reduced to the barest minimum. Our governance principles, priority projects and programs shall be anchored on the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. Securing and uniting Nigeria requires a steady and trusted hand, and this is our commitment and promise to Nigerians. I, Peter Gregory Onwa Obi, and my running mate, Yusuf Daddy Baba Ahmed, are the leaders you can trust. So, help us God.